As the foghorn's mournful wail pierced the twilight, I ascended the lighthouse's spiraling iron stairs, each step resounding like a heartbeat in the gathering dark, while the sea below churned with secrets I'd long tried to forget. My name is Rowan, and I've spent my 28 years in this sleepy coastal town of Eldridge, where the salt air clings to everything like a persistent ghost. By day, I'm the lighthouse keeper, tending the ancient mechanisms that keep this beacon alive, oiling gears, checking the massive lens that slices through the night, guiding ships from the jagged rocks that claimed too many before them. It's steady work, the kind that anchors you, especially when the waves crash with a fury that still sends chills down my spine. Ever since I was a boy, after the storm took my father out on his boat and left my mother and me to piece together a life from the wreckage, I've carried this weight, a fear of the deep that keeps me tethered to the shore, and a quiet vow to protect what's left of my family, no matter the cost. Up here, high above the relentless tide, I find a fragile peace in the routine, watching the horizon swallow the sun, unaware that the shadows were about to pull me under. That evening, as I descended the creaking spiral stairs of the old Eldridge lighthouse, the wind howled outside like a chorus of restless spirits, rattling the iron framework that had stood sentinel over the jagged coastline for over a century. The air was thick with the salty tang of the sea, mingled with the faint scent of rust from the aging structure. My boots thudded hollowly on each step, a rhythmic descent that matched the steady thrum of my heartbeat. I'd just finished my shift, a solitary job I'd taken after Dad's death, a way to escape the world while watching over the treacherous waters that had claimed him. The isolation suited me, or so I thought, until my phone buzzed in my pocket, vibrating against my thigh like an unwelcome intruder. I fished it out, the screen glowing faintly in the dim light filtering through the narrow windows. It was the hospital. My heart skipped as I answered, pressing the device to my ear. "Rowan?" My mother's voice was weak, barely audible, frayed like an old sail in a gale. "The doctors say it's advanced lung cancer. Not much time left." The words hit like a rogue wave pulling me under. I gripped the railing, knuckles whitening as memories flooded in. Dad's empty chair looming like a ghost at every meal. Mom had been our anchor, her quiet strength holding my sister and me together, forcing smiles through tears while cooking his favorite stew, as if to summon him back. But now, cancer eroded her from within, turning her into a shadow. I couldn't lose her too, not after Dad. My voice cracked as I promised. "I'll find a way, Mom. Any way. I swear I'll fix this." The line went dead, leaving only the distant crash of waves against the rocks below. I slumped against the cold wall, the weight of it all pressing down like the oppressive fog that often shrouded the coast. That night, back in my cramped cottage at the base of the lighthouse, sleep eluded me. Wind battered the windows as rain pattered against the panes, a prelude to the storm brewing offshore. I paced the worn floorboards, creaking underfoot, my mind racing. Desperation drove me to my laptop, where nights blurred into a haze of frantic searches, experimental treatments in distant clinics, miracle cures peddled by shady websites, holistic remedies promising the impossible. I scoured forums, medical journals, even obscure blogs, my eyes burning from the screen's glow. But nothing felt tangible. Nothing offered real hope amid the sea of false promises. That's when I stumbled upon the legends. Buried in a forgotten corner of a local history site, tales of an ancient artifact hidden in the sea caves along Eldridge's cliffs. A mystical amulet said to heal the gravest wounds, mending what modern medicine could not. The stories dated back centuries, tied to shipwrecks and lost sailors who claimed it had been forged by a long-forgotten civilization, perhaps washed ashore from a distant land. Locals dismissed it as folklore, yarns spun in dimly lit pubs over pints of ale, stories of glowing runes that could knit flesh and banish illness. But the details chilled me. Accounts of seekers vanishing into the caves, never to return, their boats found splintered on the rocks. The caves were notorious, a labyrinth of twisting passages carved by millennia of relentless tides, riddled with treacherous currents and hidden pitfalls. And the ocean. My fear of it surged like bile in my throat, a phobia born from 5 years prior. I'd seen the autopsy report. Drowned after his boat capsized in calm waters. No storm to blame. Just bad luck, they said. But for Mom, I'd face it. I'd dive into that void if it meant saving her. The decision gnawed at me the next day as I gathered supplies in town. Eldridge was a sleepy coastal hamlet, its streets lined with weathered clapboard houses and shops reeking of fish and brine. Fishermen eyed me warily while I bought a sturdy rowboat, ropes, and a waterproof flashlight, their murmurs trailing me like shadows. "Going out in this weather, Owen. Madness," old Harlan grumbled from behind the bait shop counter, his face creased like driftwood. But I ignored them, my resolve hardening like the cliffs themselves. The storm hit that evening as I rowed out from the sheltered cove, the sky a boiling mass of black clouds unleashing torrents of rain. Waves slammed against my small boat, jarring my bones as the wooden hull groaned in protest. Salt water sprayed my face, stinging my eyes and soaking my clothes, its cold seeping into my skin like icy fingers. My arms burned from pulling the oars against the current dragging me out to sea. Lightning forked across the horizon, illuminating the cliffs in stark, ghostly flashes, while thunder rolled like an ancient beast's roar. Heart pounding, I anchored the boat as close as I dared to the cave's entrance, the chain rattling as it plunged into the dark water. The cave's mouth loomed like a yawning maw, waves surging in and out with a rhythmic suck and pull, the sound resounding ominously. I waded in, the waist-deep water frigid and tugging at my legs like unseen hands. My flashlight beam sliced through the dripping darkness, illuminating walls crusted with barnacles and slick with algae, while the air hung heavy with the stench of decay and salt water. Every step was treacherous. Rocks shifted underfoot, and I slipped more than once, scraping my palms on jagged surfaces. Deeper inside, the cave narrowed, its ceiling dropping until I had to stoop, the constant drip, drip of water from stalactites, a maddening rhythm. My breath came in short gasps as claustrophobia pressed in, mingling with terror at the ocean's nearness. What if the tide rose? What if I got trapped? But thoughts of Mom propelled me forward, her frail form in the hospital bed, the beeps of machines monitoring her fading life. Finally, after what felt like hours navigating the twisting passages, my light fell on something unnatural, an old chest, half buried in a mound of sand and debris, its wood warped and iron bands rusted but intact. My pulse raced as I dug it free, sand cascading away like revealed secrets. The lid creaked open with a protesting groan, revealing treasures nestled on faded velvet. The amulet, a pendant of tarnished silver, etched with strange runes that seemed to writhe in the flashlight's beam, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. And beside it, a bundle of strange glowing rods whose origin date I couldn't possibly ascertain. Excitement warred with doubt. Was this real? I had to test it. Earlier in my haste, I'd gashed my hand on a sharp rock, blood welling from the cut. Trembling, I pressed the amulet to the wound. A warm pulse emanated from it, like a heartbeat syncing with my own. Before my eyes, the flesh knit closed, the pain vanishing like mist in sunlight. No scar remained, only smooth skin. Awe washed over me, mingled with creeping unease. This power felt unnatural, as if drawn from something dark and hideous. But there was no time to ponder. The cave seemed to close in, the water level rising subtly. I pocketed the glowing rods and clutched the amulet, fleeing back through the passages. The storm raged outside, but I rowed to shore with renewed vigor, the artifact warm against my chest like a promise fulfilled. Back home, the cottage felt like a sanctuary after the cave's horrors. Mom had been discharged to palliative care, her bed set up in the living room where she could see the ocean surge through the window, a view she'd always loved. She lay pale and shrunken under the blankets, her breath's shallow rasps resounding in the quiet room. The air smelled of antiseptic and illness, a stark contrast to the fresh bread she used to bake. I knelt beside her, my hands shaking as I pressed the amulet to her chest. Its energy pulsed again, stronger this time, a faint glow suffusing her skin. I watched in breathless anticipation as color returned to her cheeks, her breathing easing into a steady rhythm. Her eyes fluttered open, clearer than they'd been in weeks. "Rowan, what did you do?" she asked softly, a weak smile touching her lips. Tears blurred my vision as I hugged her, offering thanks to whatever force had granted this miracle. For the first time in months, hope flickered like the lighthouse beam cutting through the night. But joy soured fast, curdling into dread. That very night, as the storm subsided into drizzling rain, a shadow loomed at my door. I was in the kitchen, brewing tea for Mom, when the knock came, heavy, insistent. Peering through the peephole, I saw him, a grizzled treasure hunter whose name I'd heard in hushed tones around town. Victor. He was a hulking figure, his face scarred and weathered like the cliffs, eyes gleaming with predatory greed under the porch light. Rumors painted him as a scavenger of shipwrecks, a man who'd do anything for relics of the deep. I'd never crossed paths with him before, but the way he stood there, rain dripping from his oilskin coat, sent a chill down my spine. I cracked the door, chain still latched. "What do you want?" My voice was steadier than I felt. He smirked, baring yellowed teeth. "That amulet's mine, boy. I know you found it in the caves. Hand it over, and maybe I'll let you walk away." How did he know? Panic surged through me, but I slammed the door shut and bolted it. He pounded again, his voice muffled yet menacing. "You think you're the first to chase those legends? I've been hunting that thing for years. Your old man got in my way once. I took care of him. Easy enough to cut a fuel line in the dark." The confession struck like a thunderclap, rage boiling in my veins. Dad's accident was no accident at all. Victor had murdered him for some cursed treasure. The room spun, memories flashing, the Coast Guard's report, the empty casket at the funeral, Mom's silent sobs. I snatched the amulet from the table, stuffed it into my pocket, and bolted out the back door into the rain-slicked streets. Victor's footsteps thundered behind me, his snarls cutting through the fog. The town was a blur of mist and shadow, street lamps casting hazy pools of light on the wet cobblestones. Rain pelted down, soaking me to the bone, my breaths ragged as I darted through alleyways. Eldridge at night was a labyrinth of narrow lanes and abandoned warehouses, the air thick with the scent of seaweed and damp earth. Victor was relentless, his larger frame closing the gap with surprising speed. "You can't run forever, boy," he bellowed, his voice resounding off the buildings. I glanced back, seeing his silhouette lunging through the fog, a knife glinting in his hand. Terror fueled my legs, but my mind raced. Where to go? The lighthouse, my sanctuary, high on the bluff, its beam sweeping the darkness like a watchful eye. I veered toward the path up the cliffs, the ground slippery underfoot, mud sucking at my boots. Wind whipped my hair, carrying the roar of the surf below. Victor was gaining, his heavy breaths audible, curses spat into the night. I reached the lighthouse door, fumbling with slick, rain-soaked keys. It swung open just as he tackled me from behind, slamming me against the wall. Pain exploded in my shoulder, but I twisted free and scrambled up the spiral stairs. The structure groaned under our weight, metal steps clanging like alarm bells. We burst onto the catwalk, high above the crashing surf, the wind howling around us like banshees. The drop was sheer, jagged rocks below unforgiving, amid waves foaming white in the moonlight. Victor cornered me against the railing, his face twisted in triumph. "Give it up," he growled, wrenching at my jacket as his fingers closed around the amulet's chain. We grappled, slipping on the wet grating, his knife flashing dangerously close. In the struggle, my hand brushed the bundle in my pocket, the glowing rods from the cave. Desperation sparked an idea. I yanked one free and struck it against the rail. It ignited in a blinding burst of green and purple light, screaming into the night like a distress signal to distant ships. The glow illuminated Victor's shocked face, searing his vision as he howled, staggering back and clutching his eyes. But the fight wasn't over yet. Sirens wailed in the distance, closing in. Someone had spotted the glow and alerted the authorities. Victor recovered faster than expected, blinking away the after-images as his shadow lunged again. The amulet's power hummed in my grasp, a tempting dark suggestion urging me to use it, not just to heal, but to harm. I hesitated, the wind tearing at us on the slick, treacherous catwalk. Below, the sea churned as hungry as ever, and I wondered if this was how Dad had felt in his final moments, trapped, fighting an unstoppable force. Victor's knife arced toward me. I dodged, the blade scraping sparks off the railing. The flare sputtered in my hand, its fading light casting eerie shadows that danced like phantoms. "You think a little light will stop me?" He snarled, his voice raw with pain and fury. Madness gleamed in his eyes, years of obsession etched into every line of his face. This man had taken my father, and now sought to steal my mother's second chance. Rage surged anew within me, hot and unyielding. I swung the glowing rod like a club, smashing into his side. He yelped and dropped the knife, which clattered over the edge into the void. But he was stronger. He grabbed my wrist, twisted it, and forced me back against the rail. The metal bit into my spine as the emptiness yawned below. The amulet dangled between us, its runes pulsing with an unnatural glow, as if feeding on our conflict. "It's mine!" Victor roared, spittle flying from his lips. In that moment, time slowed. Sirens wailed louder, red and blue lights flashing up the cliff path. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? The amulet's warmth intensified, surging energy tingling my skin. Sensations echoed in my mind, not words, but urges, pressing me to channel its power. With a cry, I pressed it against Victor's chest, not to heal, but to unleash its darkness. A jolt surged through us like electricity from a storm cloud. He convulsed, eyes widening in shock, then stumbled back, gasping. The distraction was enough. I kicked out, my boot connecting with his knee. He buckled, teetering on the edge. For a split second, our eyes locked, his greed turning to terror, mine cold with resolve. As the police stormed the catwalk, their flashlights slicing through the rain like beacons of judgment, Victor slumped against the railing, still reeling from the amulet's jolt and the glow rod's blinding glare. He didn't have time to lunge again. Strong hands yanked him back from the edge, cuffing his wrists as he spat curses into the wind. "You should have let the sea take me, boy," he snarled, his eyes betraying defeat as years of shadows caught up with him. Alerted by the glow I'd ignited as a desperate signal, authorities swarmed the lighthouse, their questions sharp, but my story holding firm. The chase, the confession about Dad's murder, the artifact's lure. Victor's arrest unraveled everything. Searches of his dingy shack uncovered logs of sabotaged hunts, black market deals, and evidence linking him directly to that accident on the water. The town buzzed with the scandal, old wounds reopening. But for me, it was closure. A ghost finally laid to rest. Dad's death wasn't random cruelty. It had a face, now behind bars, and that knowledge loosened the knot of fear that had bound me for so long. With Victor gone, I returned home under a clearing sky, the amulet's weight a final temptation in my pocket. Mom was waiting, her strength returning from the partial healing, but I knew the artifact's power demanded balance. Kneeling by her bedside, I pressed it to her chest one last time, channeling its ethereal glow. Warmth flooded the room, banishing the last shadows of illness. She sat up, whole and vibrant, pulling me into an embrace that felt like our lost family reborn. "You've carried enough, Rowan," she said softly, her voice strong as the tides. "Let it go." Tears stung my eyes as I nodded, knowing she was right. The amulet had saved us, but its suggestions hinted at darker hungers if kept. At the next dawn, I rode back to the caves, the ocean calm for once, its surface mirroring my steadier gaze. No storm raged, no terror gripped me. I'd faced the deep and emerged unbroken. Slipping into the familiar darkness, I returned the artifact to its chest, sealing it away with the glowing rods, a vow to let legends sleep. As I emerged into the light, the fear that had so long defined me dissolved like mist, replaced by a quiet strength. Dad's legacy, not in tragedy, but in the bonds it forged. As the foghorn's mournful wail pierces the twilight once more, I ascend the lighthouse's spiraling iron stairs, each step resounding like a heartbeat in the gathering darkness. Below, the sea churns not with forgotten secrets, but with the promise of tomorrow. My name is Rowan, and in the sleepy coastal town of Eldridge, I've traded shadows for light, protecting my family with the peace we've earned, not from fear. High above the relentless tide, the horizon stretches infinite, and I am finally free. Hey guys, it's Malice here. I really appreciate you sticking around until the end of the story. I'm a one-man operation and trying my best to grow, so if you like what you just heard, please leave me a like. Subscribe if you want to hear more, and please send me any reading requests you might have. I'm always struggling to find new content. Thanks again, and stay scared.